Hey, good morning out there. Thank you for joining me for another Paragon product training and education session. My name is Shawn Mitchell. I am the Paragon rep for Ohio and the greater Pittsburgh area. By this time, I hope many of you have been able to join us for the first series of product training and education we've had going now for a couple weeks. We've talked about some machine film products and some hand film products and all of those. And moving forward, we're going to be adding a few different items to that mix. So you guys are going to get a chance to learn about the rest of the items in the Paragon Films product line. So to date, we have covered Cold Force, which is the machine film that is specifically designed for cold and freezer applications. We've talked about Global Force, which is an excellent go-to product when you're out there in the marketplace and price may be more of a concern than it usually is when we're talking about Paragon Films, because we know that we have a cost-based approach. We've talked about Ultimate Force, which is a very soft film, great for high RPM applications, great when containment force doesn't necessarily need to be the driving factor in a film account. We have talked about Contrast, which is a very unique, very high slip, low coefficient of friction machine film. And then if you've been with me, we've talked about a few of the hand film products. So we've introduced Titus, which is the newest pre-stretch film from Paragon. We have talked about Torque and that product line and why it's different than a pre-stretch film or a conventional film. Alan Abbott is part of my team, and he's going to be introducing Edge hand film. I believe that session already happened this morning. So as far as hand film goes, the final item that we haven't discussed in detail is going to be the Spartan hand film. And Edge and Spartan have been around the longest at Paragon. Spartan has been around since I believe the mid 90s, and I think Edge has been around a little bit longer than that. So over Paragon's 30-year history as a stretch film manufacturer, those are the two products that we have been producing for the longest time. And each one of those has a very specific portion of the market or a very specific type of customer or prospect that you're going to want to be targeting with these types of films. And anyone who has joined me to discuss Torque or Titus, we've done a lot of background on how conventional films are formulated and a little bit on how they're manufactured. So we're going to talk a lot today about what Spartan was really created to do, what problems was that created to solve when it comes to conventional film. So that's the type of stuff that we're going to be talking about in regard to Spartan. Now, I just want to touch briefly on blown film versus cast film. Alan Abbott in his Edge hand film presentation is going to go into much more detail on this, but it is important to know the basics, that there is a difference in the manufacturing processes and why for Paragon cast film is our only manufacturing process and why we feel that's the superior process. When it comes to blown film lines, there's just a lot more challenges when it comes to having continuity in film gauge when you're producing, having continuity in cling. Typically, we know that the optics on blown films are very, very hazy. It's cloudy, hard to see through, and that's increasingly become a problem over the years as it's become more and more important for our customers to be able to scan barcodes and read tags through the film after the load has already been wrapped. So blown film has several challenges, those included, and it's a manufacturing process that's been around for a long time. It's still used in the marketplace today. One of the characteristics that some people like about blown film is it is usually very, very clingy. It's got a high cling value on that film, so it's a very sticky film. But outside of that, there are just more performance challenges in the mind of Paragon than there are benefits from that method of manufacturing film. So all the film produced at Paragon, whether it's hand film or machine film, is done so on a cast film line. And the cast film line just gives for much better gauge control, footage control. We get those really excellent optics, that high clarity, because when the film comes out of the extruder and it's still very hot, it's solidified and basically the polymer chains are crystallized and lined up immediately, because the first thing it hits is a very highly polished chill roller, whereas with a blown line, that film is cooled by inflating it and carrying it up, so it takes it a moment to cool. But with the cast line, that film is cooling down almost instantaneously, and it's giving us a lot of those performance characteristics we want to see. So cast film is just overall a much more consistent process. You're going to get a much higher quality film off of the cast line than you are off of a blown film line. So I want to talk a little bit about why Spartan came to be in the first place, because we are talking about a conventional hand film with the Spartan line of films. But there were certain issues out there in the market with the existing conventional hand films that Paragon saw. So the goal with Spartan was not to produce just another conventional hand film to introduce to the marketplace, but it was to produce a conventional hand film that really addressed the issues that we saw with the films out there. So standard conventional films have a standardized manufacturing process, and they also use very general generic types of resins in those resin formulations. So you're going to see a lot of butene in hand films out in the marketplace. And that's something that Paragon is just not known for doing. So we'll talk about resin formulation a little bit here in a minute, but typically with the standard formulations that you see on conventional hand films out in the field, you're going to get performance characteristics that, you know, usually give us a softer film. It's difficult to optimize that on pallet stretch. And any of you that have been with me for Titus or Torque, when we're talking about hand film, we have talked a lot about the difficulty that we have with conventional films when it comes to getting to that maximum stretch potential in that film, because typically these films are so soft, they will just continue to stretch and stretch. That makes it very difficult for us to have an operator in the field that can consistently lock that film out on the load and get consistent containment on that load. And then at the same time, get containment that's tight enough with that really soft, stretchy film that once the load is put on the back of the truck and starts traveling, when it shifts, it loses that containment. So we've talked a lot about that, and that is a big factor in the way Spartan hand film was designed, because we wanted to address that. Now, another problem with those very soft film formulations is when you're wrapping a load and you're getting that excessive amount of stretch out of that product, the film is going to neck down significantly. So if you have got an 18-inch roll of conventional hand film and you're wrapping a pallet with it and you're putting some good force on it when you're walking around the corners and getting some good stretch out of that film, you're going to neck that 18-inch web down to, it could be even 12 inches, depending on how much you're stretching it, it could be more. But when you think about how that affects the amount of coverage you're putting on that pallet and how many additional revolutions you have to go around that load because you've only got that narrow web of film that's actually making contact with the load by the time the film stretches out, that's a real problem. So that's, again, something else we're going to talk about with the way Spartan was designed. And then in these films, we typically see much harder and louder unwind, just the way that these conventional formulations of resins are produced and put into these films. They take a lot more energy to unwind, and they're a lot louder. And then we typically see the need for heavier gauges. Because these films are so soft and they will stretch so much, you have to use that 80 gauge, that 90 gauge or 70 gauge, whatever it may be. There's a need for those heavier gauge films because you've got that stretch potential left in the film that requires more film on the load to actually secure it correctly. So these were really the things that Paragon took a look at back in the mid 90s when they were considering launching a new conventional hand film line. And these were the problems we wanted to address with conventional film when we produced this product. So when we're talking about Spartan hand film, again, this is a conventional film, but any of you that are familiar with our Nexus line of machine film and have gone through that product training, you know one of the things we always say with Nexus is that is a stiffer film and it takes more force to stretch. So Paragon has really been using that stiffer film formulation for a long time in our products because we understand that if containment is our entire goal for being in the stretch film industry, and we want to be able to contain loads from point A to point B, then we don't need a softer film formulation that will just stretch, as much as we want it to. We need a stiff film formulation that's going to have the benefits of high puncture resistance and quick tensilization, but that stiffer film overcomes a lot of those problems that we see with softer film formulation. So we're going to get a much faster film lockout with the Spartan line of hand films when compared to other conventional films. And that faster film lockout means that load is going to get its optimum level of containment much more quickly and with a lot less effort from your operators out in the field trying to stretch that conventional hand film so it locks up. By the same token, with that stiffer formulation, there's going to be a lot less neck down on a roll of Spartan conventional film. So we're not going to be as worried about an 18-inch wide web of film necking all the way down into 12 inches because that film's stiff enough. It's designed to lock out and neck down, so you're not stretching it so far. So we also find that we need much lighter gauges when we're going up against those 70, 80, 90 gauges. We can typically use a much lower gauge in the Spartan because it's that different film formulation and it's that stiffer film formulation that gives us all the benefits of the containment and the compression without needing all that extra film. And again, that just goes back to why have a soft film that, yes, it will stretch a long time, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really do the job that we want it to do. Why not have a higher quality stiff film that locks out for us? It's easier to unwind, takes less force to stretch, it won't neck down. It's going to give us what we're looking for much more quickly than other conventional films will. So it is important to note that while Spartan is not the standard film formulation that we're talking about with most conventional films, because Paragon really takes a hard look at resin and resin formulations, this is still made using a conventional manufacturing process. So there's nothing that's all that earth-shattering about the way Spartan is manufactured on our extrusion lines. It's just that high quality resin blend that's giving us that stiffer film formulation that allows us to reduce the overall usage for our customers and give them increased film performance. So Spartan is certainly going to have higher performance values, higher clarity. We know we're going to get to that optimum containment force much more quickly. It's got a high puncture resistance rating. And like all of our products at Paragon, this is going to be a very consistent product coming off of our lines. And a lot of that goes into the process engineering that we do internally, and then also the quality control standards that we have in place and how frequently we are testing rolls as they're coming through the production line and putting them through the ESTL test stand, gathering data and making sure that we're producing consistent uniform products. So just a quick snapshot at some of the product offering there with Spartan. There are obviously different widths available, a few different footages, but this is just a quick glimpse. The thing to take away is a 39 gauge all the way up to 110. I would say the bulk of what we see out there today with Spartan is probably in that 39 to 51 gauge range. And those films are being taken up against your prospects and your customers that are using 80, 90, 100 gauge hand film, because we know when we're talking to them, we can explain the difference between a very soft hand film formulation and a stiff hand film that's designed to perform the way we want it to. So just keep in mind that these are some of your options available. And now I know we've talked about a lot in especially the torque presentation. We can show customers using conventional hand film a torque product that will do the job for them better than their conventional film is. So Spartan is absolutely there in your reserve for your customers that no matter what you show them as far as concrete data with a torque product, if they tell you that they just absolutely must have conventional hand film like they are used to using, like they've used, since day one in their operation, then at least with the Spartan line of products, you can offer to show them a 51 gauge to take up against their 80 gauge. And that would be a pairing I would do anytime I was out in the field at a customer that told me they had to have conventional film, they only used 80 gauge. I would lead with my Spartan 51 gauge. And then I would go do, like we've talked about in the Titus training and in the torque training, I would go do a full scale hand film audit at that customer, and I would collect all the data and I would put it in the client analysis tool and present to them a usage valuation, show them the cost savings and show them the sustainability savings that we're capable of doing, because these are all things that we should be doing when it comes to hand film. So we've talked a lot about this already in the presentation, but there's just a ton of R&D that goes into these products, and Spartan is no exception. Looking at the resin formulations before this film hit mass production and deciding what was going to be the best formulation to resolve those problems that we see with conventional film. Fixing that softer film, making it a stiffer formulation so we got less neck down, we got easier optimization and less force to stretch. So what we sell is transit protection film, and we can offer the benefits of lower cost and less waste to our customers when we do things the right way and use the right methodology. And that would be doing the full analysis and gathering the data we need to then go present it back to our customers in the form of a client analysis report. So with the Spartan film, just the key points to be thinking about are you are going to be showing that customer a film that's optimized in consistency and in stiffness, and you're going to be able to show them a reduction in their usage up against their heavier gauge conventional film if that's what they absolutely have to have. Now let's talk really quickly about anyone who has not participated in the Paragon 5-star training. I encourage you to reach out to your Paragon rep today and ask them how you can get started. If you don't have the login information anymore, just reach out and ask for that email to be resent so you can contact Zach Poole, Alan Abbott, Adam Luckin, Carla Thorne, or myself. You're also welcome to email Jared Dowler at Paragon, and he can either get you your credentials sent back to you or get you set up to log in for the first time. This is something that going through the first 3 stages of the 5-star training that are all web-based, so it's something you can be doing right now while we're all kind of stuck at home. By the time you get through module 3, you're going to have an understanding of stretch film and, more importantly, the math and the calculations behind auditing film at your customers that 90% of the reps in the field that you're competing against just have no clue how to do this stuff. without the assistance of their stretch film rep. So it really puts you head and shoulders above your competition to be able to do some of the things we teach you how to do. Like I said, especially in terms of the math. And then one of the benefits of going through that training is we can get you set up on the client analysis tool so you can generate these reports yourself. If you choose to, of course, we're always available to make calls with you guys and do whatever we need to do to support you, but you can have the client analysis tool on your own. It's a great way to present data that is unlike anything anyone else is doing out there in the industry, especially with all the sustainability metrics that we have in the program that you can present to your customers. These reports are absolutely excellent. A great way to keep your conversation moving forward, especially when you're dealing with a piece of new business. So I want to thank you for joining me to learn about Spartan. I'd encourage you to check the schedule and log in for the next couple sessions that are coming up for the remainder of the day today. I believe there will be more coming tomorrow, and we're just happy to be working with you guys and upping your education level and getting you ready to get back out in there in the field when the time comes. But in the meantime, contact me or your rep, and we will get you squared away with anything you missed or anything you may need to know. Have a great day.